Tonight, once again, we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Bryan Kohberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latest gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Philip J. Pride, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
You guys know what to do, just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the DT Show. Today, we're going back into the Bryan Kohberger case. I was actually not going to do a show on BK tonight, but some new information has dropped, or a body cam has dropped on the traffic stop that occurred in August before the murders, where Bryan Kohberger got pulled over, got cited for a seatbelt infraction. Now, I remember, I think I told you guys a while back that I thought that was going to be the first thing to drop with the FOIAs that were going to come out, that we'd probably see this traffic stop, and it appears I was correct. So let's break it down. Let's look at it. Let's hear it. I've enhanced this myself. I kind of cleared up the image a little bit, kind of brightened it up a little bit so we can see a little bit more detail. I've also enhanced the audio where Bryan Kohberger speaks. I've increased that volume. So without further ado, let's break it down. Let's look into it. But before, like, comment, subscribe, mods. Thank you guys for being here. Members, thank you guys. You guys rock. We're getting really close to 50,000 guys. It'd be really nice to hit it. But without further ado, let's break it down. Let's watch this. And I'm gonna pause this and I'm gonna break this down throughout this entire process. So we're gonna look at it. I'm not gonna play it or anything like that all the way through. I'm just gonna start breaking it down.
Pullman Farm with Pennsylvania, Lincoln Frank 649.
All right. So what's the first thing that? Well, there's one thing that caught my eye, right? It happened a little bit earlier. I had to back up and look, but the first thing that catches my eye here is that we have Bryan Kohberger's vehicle. Looks fairly clean. The taillights are on. You can kind of see the headlights in the distance. When the officer comes back, the headlights are no longer on, and neither are the taillights. But in this first stop, as he's approaching, the headlights are on, the taillights are off. Now, this is about 11 p.m., somewhere around there. And according to court documents, Bryan Kohberger was allegedly, this was one of the times that Bryan Kohberger was within 100 meters of the victim's house on one of the, either it was 13, I think there's been some reports that say 23, some say 13 or 12 times that he was around the 1122 King Road residence. This was one of those nights. This is him leaving the area after being out there for about an hour, and then heading back towards Pullman. So the headlights are on. So the first thing that we know is he just came from the victim's house. Now I'm going to back it up, but what I want you guys to notice is, and you can see the beams of light out here.
Hey there.
Look at how dark the interior of his car is, even though his headlights are on and the vehicle is on. Look at how dark it is in there. Now, that is something that you have to manually do, obviously. Now, some that say that Bryan Kohberger is innocent might point to visual snow or some other reason why he might have it so dark in the interior of his vehicle. But to me, what I'm thinking is, this is August. It's hot. It's humid. I wouldn't be surprised if, obviously we know that he was just outside of the victim's house. I wouldn't be surprised if he was out there watching from the tree line area, from the back area, with the car on, and obviously didn't want all the lights on inside the vehicle, illuminating his presence back there. So he turned them all off. All of the lights inside are off. And as you can see, the headlights and the taillights are on. So I just wanted you guys to notice that. Second thing I want you guys to notice is as the officer approaches, he just stays steady forward. He does not turn until the officer knocks on the window. He's facing forward.
Hey there. I saw you go a little fast. You realize this is 35? It is. Yes. You go. Yeah, 43 is what the radar said. Yeah. You have your license.
All right, so the light is on. You can see he has two bottles of water in a center dash. One appears to be completely empty and squashed. I wish I could zoom in a little bit more. The other one, and you can't tell if it's full or not, doesn't appear to be. I mean, I can kind of see the inside of the wrapper, like from the top part, from where the hole is. And, if it was full, I would think, I don't know, maybe not. And you can see this blue object in the passenger seat, in the cubby area. That is, when I first looked at it, I thought maybe perhaps that was COVID masks, something like that. The next thing that I noticed,
No.
and I'll put it back here in a minute.
That's so good. Honest with you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Absolutely. Honest. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You have a vehicle registration slip.
So here it is. Now, if you guys it's going to be kind of hard to see this, but if you guys look in this general area where I'm circling, you're looking at the rear view mirror, you have the pillar, you have the door panel at the top. Where the door panel and the pillar meet, you can see a fine area of dust all throughout this area, all up in there, and it would be common for a vehicle to have dust in that area. That's not a common place people wipe or things of that nature. You gotta kind of have to get in there. But when you think about how his vehicle was described after the murders, it was immaculate. There was no dust anywhere, and they took things apart to find dust. Yet here we are. We have some sort of dust or whatnot. All right, now let's roll back a little bit so we can hear what his explanation was. He asks him, if he had his seatbelt on, and Bryan Kohberger says no. And I'll kind of repeat because it's kind of hard to hear, but I have my headphones on so I can hear what he's saying, and I'll repeat what he says.
License and registry. Were you wearing your seatbelt when I stopped you?
He said, geez, no.
No. That's so good. Honest with you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Absolutely. Honest.
He said, just being honest with you. I mean, you guys have radar, so there's no point in lying.
Radar. Yeah.
He goes, and then you have the radar, and then he finds it funny. He thinks it's a funny joke. I mean, he's trying to be funny. The officer is a little bit confused by it.
Yeah. Okay. You have a vehicle registration slip.
So I'll rewind that.
Absolutely. Honest. Yeah. Radar. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You have a vehicle registration slip or something like that. Okay. Slip or something like that. Okay. Yeah, your insurance. That's good. Thing is, I'm on a overtime shift right now. One of the conditions we have to enforce the law, and so
So you can see that dirty area right here a lot better on the inside pillar area. And so, he was a guy that kept his car clean. And, there's nothing wrong with keeping your car clean. But for a guy how clean his car was, I mean, I can already see dust and stuff here. I would say that the reason his car was clean and so clean was because of, obviously he was cleaning it so much because of the crime he committed.
Right, citation for that, $10 in Idaho. Not a huge deal, but yeah, be right back. All right, sir, here's your license back. Here, infraction citation. The only thing I let you tell you where you're finding that $10. You do have the right to.
So let me rewind that a little bit. See, lights are off. Headlights are off, and so are the tail lights. So I just wanted to point that out. Nothing nefarious about that. Just showing that in case somebody says, "Oh, his lights were off." Yeah, they were the second time, not the first time.
All right, sir, here's your license back. Here, infraction citation. The only thing I let you tell you where you're finding that $10. You do have the right to a hearing on this. If you'd like one, if you'd like hearing, you need to request it before September 8th at 8:30. Otherwise, it'll automatically be entered against you. You lose the rights to hearing. Want to pay it? The mailing address there, website right there.
I just have a question about this. So in terms of like how much you get a speed, that's obviously reported to your insurance system.
So what he asked the officer is, I have a question. For his insurance purposes, speeding would be reported to his insurance. Would this no seatbelt also be reported to his insurance?
I don't think so. I think it's only moving violations that go to insurance. Things that might put points on your license. I'm not 100% sure. Okay. Could I get a phone number for you?
Yeah, why?
So here's where he has about the phone number. And, Ann Taylor kind of made it seem a lot like Bryan Kohberger was a lot more confrontative, confrontational. Sorry about that, guys. Ann Taylor made him seem like he was more confrontational during the hearings when she said that, when she wanted to exclude some of this and at least get some of this edited out. And this was a part of it was because that he had questioned why he wanted his phone number. And I don't really see I don't see him being very combative in this situation. In my opinion, he asks why. The officer explains it, and he says, okay. And so, not really something there, in my opinion.
Could I get a phone number for you?
Yeah, why?
We need to put it on the citation as it goes to the court.
This was redacted.
Just for future reference, I mean, I'm obviously following this person. I told you I wasn't wearing my seatbelt.
He goes, just for future reference. Obviously, I'm an honest person. I told you about my seatbelt. Yeah, whatever, dude.
When people lie to you about that, say I lied to you about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just my own knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Because when people lie to you about that, if I were to lie to you about that, just for my own personal knowledge. He says, do you honestly go back and look at that, or do you just, and then he's just.
With a seatbelt like this, I didn't check as I was coming up, so that's why I asked it. Usually, I should. I noticed you weren't wearing it, and I'm on this emphasis, and like I said, I'm getting paid by ICU. They want to sit with seatbelt laws, so I was being more aware of that. Where I'm coming from. Okay. All right. Have a good night.
He seemed upset. He seemed kind of pissed, but he didn't have that same look like when he got pulled over on his way home. That he's asking, and I don't understand the officers. Now things could be different out there in Moscow or in Idaho than they are in Texas, but nothing can tell you to give a citation, like at least out here in Texas. like and what I mean by that is like nobody can direct you to give a citation if you're an officer. Yeah, an officer has discretion. And so, as far as I know it, this is how it goes in everywhere I've known about law enforcement. But I honestly don't know anything about Idaho law or things of that nature. So it might be different there. You know, they may have quotas and things of that nature. Out here in Texas, that's not true. It's illegal for law enforcement agencies to enforce a quota, things like that. And you know, you can do drug prevention and those type of things, or even alcohol related or seatbelt related type of special work on duty or after duty or on OT. However, the actual citation or warning aspect should be the discretion of the officer, because when you start forcing something like citations and or start rewarding officers for citations and things of that nature, then it could become it's a slippery slope to becoming something unethical. And you know, so I really don't like the officer blaming the reason he's giving the citation because he's working overtime on this special assignment. um it's weird. It's a cop out, and it's potentially possibly, I mean, it would have been something that, if it's true, an illegal stop here in Texas. So take that for what it is. $10 fine for no seatbelt. In Australia, it's $1,000. Yeah, out here it's a lot higher too. It's like $300-400. But you know, one other thing that I noticed is um when the officer tells Bryan Kohberger the reason he stopped him, and he tells him for the speeding, Bryan says, "Oh, it's 35," and he goes, "I was going 41," and then I guess maybe in his mind that's why he was still saying that whole honest stuff, because he was being a little bit contradictive on what the officer said his speed was at 43 miles an hour. But when he says 43, Bryan says, "Sure," and he like stares him up and down. He does it twice, where he looks at him up and down. I don't know if he's sizing him up, checking him out. I don't know what he's doing, but let me see if I can find it. You guys tell me what you think about it when he talks about that.
There. I stopped you going a little fast. You realize this is 35? 35? It is. Yes. You go. Yeah, 43. Said. Yeah. You have your license and registry.
Let's see. She goes, "Sure," and he looks him down.
You go. Yeah, 43. Said. Yeah. You have your license and registry.
That's what I was wondering, man. He does it twice, where he looks down at his belt line. I don't know which gun he's looking at, but he does it twice.
Were you wearing your seatbelt when I stopped you? No.
It's you know, he stares him up and down, and then I kind of wondered if I don't know, because when he asked him for his phone number, he's like, "Yeah, why?" I don't know. There's he gives off some creepy vibes, Bryan Kohberger does.
For my own knowledge. Honestly, go back and look at that.
This is at the end.
With a seatbelt like this, I didn't check as I was coming up, so that's why I asked you.
It's possible.
Good. I noticed you weren't wearing it, and I'm on this emphasis. And like I said, I get paid by ICU. They want us in the law, so I was being more aware of that. Where I'm coming from. Yep. Okay. All right. Have a good night.
See, it was right there. He takes a look again at maybe he's looking at what the officers carry. Maybe he's interested in knowing what's on their belts. Does it again here.
Okay. All right. Have a good night.
So he does it twice. I mean, kind of weird, but yeah, he's a weird guy. Strange, right? Yeah, it is strange. And so just to kind of piggyback on everything that I had mentioned so far on what it is that I noticed out of this stop, I noticed that he had 2 water bottles inside of the vehicle. I noticed that there was a lump of papers on the right side. Now that could have been when he may have prepared, when he got pulled over, pulled out all of his stuff. Maybe he had some work spirals or things of that nature. But we do know that he had just came back from the King Road residence, and he had been out there for about an hour within 100 meters of the house. I had thought that a guy who had this experience and things of that nature, and I often said this very early on in this investigation, that I thought that this person, once Bryan Kohberger got arrested, that he probably went through a lot of lengths to cover his tracks. And one of the things that he probably would have done is taken handwritten notes and things of that nature while he was out there surveying or surveilling the house and things of that nature. So could that have been what was next to him? It's possible. But no way of knowing. But I did notice that the interior lights were dimmed all the way down. All the way down. So that tells me he was probably sitting back there. It's warm. It's August, so he's probably has his vehicle on, and he's watching in the back there, and he doesn't want the glow of the vehicle on, and so he dims down the lights. That's what that tells me. And I also noticed that there was some dust that was collected on the door panel near where the pillar met the door panel. And to me, it's normal. It doesn't mean anything. But when you talk about how clean his vehicle was in certain other places, like in the AC vents and things of that nature, places you would expect to find dust, there was no dust. And you see this just a few months earlier, and there's dust in plain view places, like just right there out of where you can see from where the officer was standing. I think it's telling. I think it's a very telling thing to me. All righty, guys. So let's look into some of the other things that Bryan Kohberger was doing just before the murder. So I think a lot of people have questioned, what was Bryan Kohberger doing, up until 3:26 or at 2:44 or because the PCA says at 2:44, he's driving away from the area that gives cell service to his apartment complex. But it doesn't necessarily say that he was at his apartment complex. And so a lot of us have wondered, and I think a lot of the pro-burgers have often said, hey, Bryan Kohberger couldn't have done this. There was a hit and run accident that happened. Officers were out there throughout extended period of the time throughout the night. If Bryan Kohberger was at home, he would have seen this. That would have been a red flag or something that would have prevented him from going out and doing the crime. Well, come to find out, it sounds like he wasn't at home during that time or throughout much of that night. So let's read this into this. So this is actually about the hit and run. So this says here on 11/12/2022 at approximately 23:40. So this is about 11:40 p.m. Witcom received a hit and run accident in the area of blank Pullman, Washington. The location of this accident was near the west entrance to the Steptoe apartment complex near Kohberger's residence. I downloaded 35 videos which span between 11/12/2022 at 23:41 or at 11:41 p.m. to 11:13 at 03:25 hours. So this is basically all the way up until 3 minutes before the murder, or before Bryan Kohberger's vehicle first shows up on a camera out there on Indian Hill Drive. Majority of the videos were in an area where the suspect vehicle was eventually located near Northeast California Street. I did not see a vehicle matching Kohberger's vehicle in any of the vehicles on Brandy Way or in the videos near the Northeast California Street. All of the videos captured on Brandy Way span from 11/12/2022 at 23:41 to around 11/13/2022 at 0100 hours, which is 1 a.m. Brandy Way was closed off with cones and police tape from 11:22 around 23:41 until 11:13, 12:30 hours. So that's closed off until just after noon. So Bryan Kohberger, when he got home, in the early morning hours, would have had to have gone through another entrance because it was closed off. Sergeant Chris Eagle told me that Northeast Brandy Way was cleared by 12:30 hours on November 13th. This included the west entrance to the Steptoe apartment complex, which had police tape across the entrance. The east entrance to the Steptoe apartments was available for access to the complex. While reviewing Kohberger's cell phone data extraction, I located a screenshot with the Whitcomb. This one's interesting. So when they reviewed Bryan Kohberger's cell phone information, they found a screenshot of the Whitcomb County jail roster with CF information. The last modified date and time for this image was 12/13 at 6:27:12 p.m. This image was taken from Yik Yak. Interesting. I think I'm going to try to see if that image is still available on Yik Yak or available through search. If you guys can find it, send it to me at my email, drunkturkeyshow@gmail.com. Appreciate it. But interesting. So the next thing it says, in the history Chrome tab for Kohberger, his phone, I located where he searched Google for Broadcastify, Listen, Feed, Pullman Police, Fire, and Dispatch Live. Audio feed at 11:13 at 12:26 a.m. So just before, well, about 4 hours before the murders, he's looking up Broadcastify so he can listen to 911. Now, I told you guys this. I told you this was something that I had deduced he probably did. Nobody told me this. Nobody gave me any inside tip. None of those things. This was a piece of information that I was able to deduce based on the information that we knew, based on the actions of Bryan Kohberger post-arrest, based on how comfortable he was able to go back to the scene, at 9-something in the morning, given his training and experience, and knowing how investigations are prepared. I called this one. I even called the Broadcastify, the feed that he used. But so what this tells me is that I think he was listening to, and I think the CF, I think that is the dispatcher who was with, I think that may have been the dispatcher who handled the call. Or maybe it been just one of the dispatchers that dispatched everybody out to the scene, and maybe perhaps he was trying to get a visual of who took the call, and he was interested in seeing who that person was. But the other thing that I figure that's interesting about this, it says the last modified date and time for the image was 11/13/2022 at 6:27 p.m. I thought his phone was off during that time. I thought his phone turned off between 5:30 and 8:30 on 11/13 after he left Clarkson, Washington. So I'm a little bit confused about this. Maybe he put his phone in airplane mode at that time. Maybe he didn't turn it off per se, but he put it in airplane mode and still was able to do something, because it says the last modified date and time for the image was. I wonder what that means. But thus far, it says here that he don't appear that he was home. Now, this is the AT&T data. This says here the 8458 phone connects to several different towers in Pullman, Washington, between 2 and 2:25 hours. So for about 25 minutes, it's connecting with several different towers. So he's driving around in Pullman. The phone appears to be traveling within or near the city limits of Pullman, Washington. At 2:42, the phone connects to a tower near the Northeast Skyview Drive on the Washington State University campus. At 2:47, the phone connected to a tower on on Observation Drive on the Washington State University campus. And continuing to examine the data, I found an approximately 2-hour period with no interactions between the 4858 phone and the AT&T network between 2:47 and 4:48. The phone connects to a tower located near Paradise Ridge on South to Moscow at 4:48 hours. But the important thing is, before the murders, which is the topic of today's show, is he was driving around somewhere, just driving around between 2 and 2:25. At 2:42, he connects to the towers near his house. So it's possible he would have gone back then. There was one camera that was visible on one end until 3, but the other side was only visible till 1. So he had one area where he could have pulled into his apartment complex and parked. But I could have swore the one that said 3 a.m. had a visual of the area where Kohberger usually parked, and it wasn't there. And so what that tells me is there's a good chance that maybe he saw him and he parked further away so that he wouldn't, come out in the view of the vehicle, but he was driving around that night at 2:00. So I wonder if he ever put gas. All right. Now these are some of the receipts for Bryan Kohberger. And this one goes on to say, a detective, I'm gonna butcher this up. Schweck. I hope I said that right. With ISP, provided me with a folder containing the following receipts he collected during his investigation from some of the local businesses. Walmart in Pullman, Washington, Bryan Kohberger's U.S. debit card ending in 1973. This says here that 11/12/2022 at 22:43 34 hours. So this is about 10:34 p.m. He's at the Walmart. So, I had wondered what he'd been doing throughout that night, right? I think a lot of us had, some may have thought maybe perhaps he was sleeping up until 2 something, because, for him to have committed this crime, he went out there at least 3 something in the morning around the area, commits a quadruple homicide, drives for an hour in the back area there behind Moscow, and takes this unusually long trip back to Pullman. And then he's on the phone with Pops at 6:00 in the morning. He's pulling into Pullman like at 5:30. So he's probably taking a shower, doing something to himself and taking a shower, and then calling dad and mom and which reminded me, I have an image that I think I saved that I'm gonna have to pull up. But he calls dad and mom and he speaks to them for a few hours, and then he's back at Moscow at 9 a.m. which, remember, and what told me the reason why he was back at 9 a.m. and what told me that he had a dispatch radio, or he had some access to dispatch information, or what was happening, was that return at 9:00 in the morning. Now, I strongly suspected that he was aware that he was aware that someone knew he was in that house. Now, we found out in these documents that Dylan yells out twice for Kaylee. And the second time that she yells out for Kaylee is pretty much after a lot of the crime had been committed. This is after she hears Bryan Kohberger say something to the effect, "It's okay, I'm here to help," and she hears some crying. Then she yells out for Kaylee. So I often thought that something like that had occurred. I've been saying that for a very long time, that Dylan yelled out something. And my thought was that this guy was in tunnel vision and he heard her yell something, but because he was so hyper focused in what he was doing, it was like one of those situations where you hear it, but you don't understand it. You don't know exactly, but you know that somebody is alert, somebody's awake, somebody knows that you're there. So he has to go. When he was first seen on camera was on the 700 block of Indian Hills Drive. He was directly behind the Moscow Police Department. It took him 2 minutes to drive from there to get in front of the King Road residence in a one-way in, one-way out area. So if cops showed up and blocked in that area, he's screwed, at least with his vehicle parked outside. I mean, he can take off on foot and those type of things, but the likelihood of him getting away is significantly smaller. And so he knows exactly how long it takes for them to get there. It's going to be an even faster time. And so he hears somebody, so it's time to go, which is one of the reasons why he's taken off in the manner that he did. I think that's the reason why he spared Dylan's life, was because of that. But he hears that and he goes and he takes off. Then he turns on his phone at 4:48. One of the things that we knew based on the PCA was that Bryan Kohberger didn't return back to the house after that one time at 9:00 in the morning. That takes a lot of discipline. The fact that he turned on his phone, well, let me put it this way. I don't think he would have turned on his phone had he thought Dylan didn't hear him. Let's just say that his only objective was on the 3rd floor. Xana and Ethan were collateral damage because there was a confrontation there on the hallway or on the stairway. But that he had no intention of taking anybody else's life and he was going to leave. I don't think he turns on his phone. The fact that he turns on his phone when he did tells me, and I've said it, like, those saying curiosity kills the cat. I think that was the scenario there. Turns on his phone and puts it on a VPN and then tries to listen to Broadcastify to see what's going on. That made him comfortable enough to go back at 9 a.m. in the morning. You know, he couldn't search it. He couldn't Google Idaho murders, because if he did, you know, that would definitely come back to bite him in the rear. You know, Google searches and those type of things are things that can be looked up by law enforcement, and he'd be aware of that. And so he felt comfortable to go back out there and drive out there. And, you know, he must have known that just because it's not on the news doesn't mean the scene hasn't been discovered. You know, it takes time from the time that somebody calls 911 until media starts picking it up, and that there's media outside and things of that nature. And so because of those things, while he's driving back driving back to Moscow, he must know that that scene could have been discovered at any time, if not already, and that he could be walking into a not necessarily a trap, but a canvas or a perimeter that has been established by law enforcement, because law enforcement knows that it is highly tempting for an offender to travel back. Now, the PCA said that he didn't. So all those things kind of led me to believe that he had to be comfortable enough to go back. He had to have known they hadn't found it. And the only way is if he had a radio that he could listen to. But, Dateline on this, though, Dateline tells us that he didn't make any payments, or he stopped using his credit card after November 10th. That doesn't seem to be the case. It seems that he did use it on November 12th. He had stopped, well, at least there at Walmart. And I don't know if he's used it at anywhere else. I know he's used it in other places, but it doesn't, nothing really screams out to me, to be honest with you, because there's a time frame right here between the 16th and the 17th and the 23rd. He doesn't use it. 23rd to the 29th. So he's not going to Walmart every day. And it says here that a majority of the items that were purchased were food items. On 11/7, Kohberger purchased a beanie hat, but there is no description of that hat. So about a week before the murders, he's purchasing a hat. On 12/1, Kohberger purchased utility clothes or cloths. I spoke with an employee from Walmart. Told me this was a 9-pack hand towels, which were 2 shades of gray. There was nothing else of interest on the above receipts. I would have liked to have known what he purchased at 10:34 p.m., the night leading up to the murders. The next one is Target. It says that on 11/10 at 5:42 or 17:42 hours, Bryan Kohberger used his debit card. It says right here, one receipt from Target provided from a transcript belonged to Bethany Funke. And it states here that on 11/10 at 16:09 hours, Kohberger was at the Target on the same day as Funke, but completed his transaction at 17:42. It is unknown if Funke and Kohberger were at the Target at the same time. So Funke was at the Target at 16:09, and Bryan Kohberger paid for something at 17:42, but they don't know if he had been there or if it's just coincidental that he's purchasing something from Target about an hour and a half after she's left. And I think that would be a stretch. Harbor Freight says that on 11/20, and as you can see, they're not bringing up a lot of things. The beanie, some utility cloths. So it's only things of importance. And I would think also things that they haven't found. So you have Bryan Kohberger on 11/20. This is after the murders, at just before noon. He purchased a 1,000-watt continuous inverter. And then on 11/23, a couple days later, at around 3 p.m., about just before 4 p.m., he purchased a 200-watt / 400-watt power inverter and 1-year ITC membership. And then on 11/23, about 40 minutes later, I guess he went back and purchased an inverter cable. Don't know what he's building. It says here there were several other receipts which Detective Schweck collected at Harbor Freight. These receipts did not appear related, but were collected. And so it talks about some other times that he was there, including November 26th, October 10th, October 23rd. But they bring up these specific ones about a continuous inverter, a power inverter, and an inverter cable. What do people usually use inverters for? I mean, it sounds like solar. You know, maybe he was out in the woods somewhere and he needed power for something. That's what it sounds like to me. It's like you would use an inverter if you had like a generator or a solar panel or a wind something. You would need to convert the power through the inverter. I think policy goes, maybe he was going out to go and hide off in the off the grid. It's possible. You know, I mean, that's the one thing that I could think of is that it's off grid solar, as the Autumn says. That's what I'm thinking. It's off grid solar. Power inverters can be used to charge phones and computers. Yeah, but this is like a 1,000 watt continuous inverter. I don't know if that's a lot or not. I think it's. I don't think it. I don't know. Don't know. I need to look this. I need to look into this more. I have some friends that are electricians. I'm going to ask them about this and see what they say. But like one of the things I was thinking of is maybe he's using it to charge up some tools or something. I mean, I don't know. Computers, charge up, going out in the wilderness, and I don't know. But that's kind of what it sounds like, right? The wilderness stuff. I mean, when you look at where he was at, oh yeah, you know what? I got to bring up those pictures. Like for instance, there was the oh gosh, what was it? There was the shovel, right? And they had some soil on it and things like that. And they said that the soil was from somewhere near Moscow, but it couldn't be anywhere further west, right? And they talk about some pollen, but that the pollen wasn't from there, but that the pollen was from pollen that was common to some plants that are commonly planted in the area. So it's not like a plant that's there. Like imagine if I don't know, you have a tree that a lot of people like, and this is basically what they did. There was reds and some other trees, and they transplanted them into the area. To me, that tells me that should be able to kind of limit the areas in which he was at. And I'm going to go through more of that maybe tomorrow or the next day of where he could have buried the knife or planted the knife or done something with it. Let's see. I wanted to bring up this image here, but I want to put it with another one. You know what? I'm just going to send it to myself real quick. Apologize for this, guys. I'm going to send this image to myself and then. Oh, where is it? I hope I can find it real quick. But I wanted to talk about the selfie with the thumbs up, which is in the there it is. All right. Okay. Selfie with thumbs up. All right. Let me pull these up real quick. Give me 1 second. I meant to have this up earlier, but all right. Handheld power tools. Yeah, that's a possibility. I know a lot of people are looking into that. Let's see. So this is the image that he took that morning, Bryan Kohberger. here's an image that I think it was on JLR's one of his posts from a while ago. This is his father, Michael Kohberger, you doing the same pose, and this was on his Venmo, I believe. And so, to me, I remember when Bryan Kohberger stood up, and then the judge said something about the respect that he was given, and then when it came down to the sentencing, Bryan Kohberger said he respectfully declined. I felt that he was reflecting what the judge had given him and said, and trying to give it back. I think this has been something that he's done most of his life to try to fit in, is mirror what he sees or what he takes information, and if it's a positive one, he tries to redo it again in order to maintain a positive experience, or whatever the case you want to call it. But I think he likes to mirror things, and this is an image his father sent him, or not sent him. This is an image his father had, and this is Bryan Kohberger's image. I thought, to me, when we find out that he took a selfie that morning, and law enforcement says that there was other selfies with a similar pose, I wouldn't be surprised if this is something they send each other back and forth, between Bryan Kohberger and his family, or at least his father. And that leads me to believe that there's a good possibility that this image may have been sent to his family. Maybe perhaps he called, and maybe they were a little bit concerned about how he was acting at 9:00 their time, but 6:00 in Washington, and are you okay? Maybe he's like, look, I'm great. Something to that nature, something to that effect. It's possible, but I think that this is something that that he does. He looks pale, yeah. And say, there it is. My overall thoughts on everything that we talked about today, just kind of wrap it all up. That traffic stop didn't seem as confrontational as Ann Taylor made it seem, or alluded to. It is a little bit awkward. Bryan Kohberger's joke is awkward. I noticed the lights were dim. I noticed that that night of the murders, kind of transitioning out of that, the night of the murders, Bryan Kohberger wasn't home that Saturday night. He was out and about, mainly, it sounds like, in Pullman. What was he doing? What was happening leading up until 2:44 a.m. when he decided to leave the area of his apartment complex and head on out, and then turn his phone off? I wonder what he was doing. I wonder what he purchased. I wish they would have implied what he purchased there, even if it was water, even if it was food, or whatever the case may have been. I wish they would have put that into the documents. But yeah, now there's some other things that we're going to break down in this case. We're not going to leave it hanging, so to speak. There's still a lot more things to come out. I've still gone through a lot of the documents. I plan on doing a closing argument type of video here in the near future. Something that I don't think we heard from, I guess, Bill Thompson. I'll try to fill in the blanks to the best of my ability, but be on the lookout for that. I'm probably going to start doing that a little bit later this week, and talk throughout the entire thing on my opinion on why and motive and those type of things. Like, for instance, I'm kind of back on when it comes to who the target was. I think it was definitely more than one person. I don't think he had just one person targeted. I think he had the third floor, at minimum, two people targeted in that house. And I'll explain that more in detail when I go through my closing argument, but I strongly suspect that to be the case. I don't think it was a single person. If you go back and watch the previous video, I was kind of breaking that down, and it kind of hit me while I was discussing that with Alina Smith. I think it was towards the end, and I was like, you know what? I think there is more than one target in this house, and it may be back to what I initially thought. What I initially thought was that Bryan Kohberger went out in the middle of the night one night. He was fascinated by crime, probably try to figure out who he was and want to feel something and those type of things, and went out for a throat kill, and he wanted the perfect victims, which needed the perfect situation. So he went out one night, looked for the house that had the biggest party, that was that had a lot of females in there, that was occupied by females, and that he selected the house, and the occupants were selected because they were young, beautiful individuals that would be a component to what you would need for a high profile crime. And I felt that there was a reason why Kaylee's vehicle didn't make a difference to him, if it was parked outside or not, or Ethan was. And initially my thought was that he wanted more. It didn't matter how many victims there was, because the more victims would create more of a high profile crime. And I think Murphy, and I've said this multiple times, is a clue to that. He opened that door on the third floor at one point or another, and he didn't need to. And so I think he definitely had both of them targeted upstairs. I'll break down more of it when I am able to deduce more of it. Let me see if you guys have any questions. Put a couple of stars. Let's see. We have Mary Beth coming in with her membership for 6 months. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's see. Xana was definitely not the target. I don't know. I just think that and there's some documents here. Apparently Xana was on her TikTok until 4:16 p.m., which makes sense for me. Now, Dylan heard Xana go up the stairs, right, with Murphy, and then run down the stairs with Murphy. Murphy would have had to have come down. So either, to me, that tells me that she was on TikTok until Murphy disturbed her at 4:16. So that says that Bryan Kohberger went into Maddie's room and then opened up Kaylee's room. Murphy ran right back past him, ran down the stairs, and then she went to take him up the stairs. Confrontation, turned around. 4:17 is when things started in Xana's room. But he didn't have to open that door for Murphy to come out. If his goal was just Maddie, and even if he heard something in Kaylee's room, you would have thought that his first thought would have been the same scenario with Dylan, right? He sees her, he hears somebody's aware of his presence. Even if he thought that Murphy was a person behind the door, your first thought there is, you only have so much time. He's got to get out of there before he's caught. He would have just ran out, but he didn't. He opened that door. He opened that door for a reason. Murphy got out of there he opened that door because, he had his mind in his eye there. He didn't have to open it if his target was just Maddie. There was no reason for him to open Kaylee's door. None. But I'll break it down more. I have a lot of details that I have highlighted and stuff. All the documents that kind of pointed to that direction. I'll probably do that on Thursday or Friday. All right. Let me see if you guys have any questions real quick. Daniel, is it not possible that Xana opened Kaylee's door, hearing Murphy, then BK saw her in Maddie's room, and then chased Xana down? I don't know. Is it possible that Xana got up? Because let's play it out, right? So at 4:16, Xana turns off her TikTok. She goes all the way upstairs into the third floor because she hears Murphy from all the way downstairs. I don't know if that makes sense. And then she's going to open a door that's closed. She's not going to knock and say, Kaylee, are you in here? She's just going to open the door. And I don't think so. Plus, Dylan mentions that she hears who she thinks is Kaylee go up the stairs with Murphy. So she goes up the stairs and then down the stairs. That was said on multiple occasions. To me, and there was one other occasion where she said that she thought she heard Kaylee dancing with him up the stairs. So to me, there's a little bit of a change. It's late. She was intoxicated. You know, it sounds like the most common thing that she said, or the most often thing, or maybe not often, but the most what's the word I'm looking for? Consistent thing that she was saying was that she heard who she thought was Kaylee go up the stairs and then down the stairs. That's what she thought she heard. But she thought she heard that with Murphy. And so for Murphy to go up the stairs with Xana, he would have had to have come down. And so my thoughts are that Murphy ran down the stairs after Bryan Kohberger opened the door up there. And he bolted into Xana's room, or to Xana's room, and she woke up, got up, and then went up the stairs. But is it possible that she went up I don't think so. If Dylan hears Xana going up the stairs with Murphy, watch. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. We got a little bit of time. Let's see. I have it here somewhere. BK. No. Murphy. I hope it didn't lose there it is. It says here, Dylan stated she was awoken at approximately 4 a.m. by what sounded like Goncalves playing with her dog in one of the upstairs bedrooms, just located on the 3rd floor. It goes, the defendant says here, because this was in the Frank's motion, and this one is the one where they're kind of arguing Bryan Kohberger's argument for some of the things that Dylan had said. And it says here, the defendant asserts Exhibit A watered down Dylan's statement about hearing Kaylee Goncalves around the time of the homicide. At approximately 4 a.m., she heard Goncalves walk up the stairs with her dog before running back down the stairs and saying, "Someone is here." The defendant points out that Ms. Goncalves was killed in her upstairs bedroom, where she was found the next morning. Thus, it could not have been Dylan who she heard running down the stairs at 4 a.m. So they concede, and they say this a couple of times, and then even in the footnotes, that it may have been Kaylee going up the stairs. They don't know that. And I think that's I think that's a cop-out, to be honest with you. You know, when they described the scene, Kaylee was underneath the blanket, as well as Maddie. They were both under the blanket. So if they're saying that it's a possibility that Kaylee was downstairs with Murphy, then went upstairs with Murphy, and I guess interrupted Bryan Kohberger and then passed away there, I think she would have been on top of the blankets. And so they concede that there's a small possibility that Kaylee could have been downstairs and went upstairs, but it is impossible for it to have been Kaylee to run down the stairs and say, "Someone is here," which, when that's what tells Dylan it was Kaylee, was the fact that she recognized the voice. "I think someone is here," and she thought that was Kaylee. That's the part that's impossible. Because Kaylee had already surmised, and that was more than likely Xana, who was still awake. So this says here that defendant points out that Ms. Goncalves was killed upstairs in the bedroom the next morning. This could not have been Dylan, who she heard running down the stairs. A review of records obtained from a forensic download of Kernodle's phone showed that this could have been Kernodle, as she was on her cellular phone, indicated she was likely awake using TikTok at approximately 4:12 a.m. Now, that aspect of it was, let me see. That was from the PCA, right? The PCA said that the PCA was written before Bryan Kohberger's arrest. Now, let's look at the TikTok user records for Xana. Now, this is from 4/5/23. So this is after the PCA was written. So this is going to be once they got the hard drive and all the other detailed information from TikTok. This says here, and there's a lot of typos, and it's upsetting, to be 110% honest with you, how many typos that law enforcement had during this entire process. But here it says TikTok user records for Xana Kernodle. The records maintained by business estate would seek admission of pursuant. The records would show that Xana Kernodle on TikTok application on November 13 at approximately 3:16 Pacific Standard Time. Now, we know that they meant 4:16. That was a typo, the 3 and the 4 together. But this isn't the only one. They've had so many. There was one instance where they were talking about these 4 spots of blood, and they accidentally typed 9 instead of the parentheses, and it said 94 and caused a big old ruckus. But that's not the only one either. There's so many typos and so many misspellings. I'm just like, man, don't you guys like review each other's work? Like, isn't there somebody that reads over it before it's turned in? It's frustrating. But Xana was there until 4:16 on her phone. So that tells me, that she got interrupted. It's probably around the time that Murphy came around the corner and woke her up. But yeah. Do I have anything else highlighted on this? I don't remember. I've gone through so much and highlighted so much. But yeah, there we go. I wonder if that's why BK said, "I'm here to help." I think he said that because she turned around. I think there was a confrontation on the stairway. I think they saw him. And I think they is in Xana and Murphy. And the reason I believe that is because Murphy didn't run with Xana to Ethan's room. Murphy ran outside. So I think they both got scared, turned around and booked it. I think that if it was just Xana, who's kind of like, I think someone's here, turns around and there was no confrontation and ran, I feel that Murphy would have followed her into the room. But he didn't. He ran outside. So that tells me there was a moment there on the stairway, probably towards the top of the stairway. I think that's when that happened. And I think there was I think she went to the comfort of her boyfriend, and Murphy ran outside. Kaylee's door was not closed. It was open the whole time. I don't know who keeps saying that, but that is not the case. The door was open. Let me see. Where was it? I have it here. There was a dog belonging to Kaylee in the 3rd floor west bedroom, which is access to the 3rd floor deck. I asked Officer Nunez to close the door to the bedroom so the dog did not try to disturb the scene. Other than that action, MPD officers left the scene as it was found. And I think I have it on one other one. I think I have it on one other report. When I arrived on the 3rd floor, they assessed the scene. I noticed the medium-sized curly dog, Tan, in the bed inside the western 3rd floor bedroom, later identified as Kaylee Goncalves. The dog appeared timid, scared, and didn't react to our presence. Due to the chaos surrounding the scene, my initial concern was preserving the scene. As part of that process, I asked one of the officers to shut the door so the dog did not attempt to jump on the bed with any of the victims. So door was open the entire time. And we know that because the dog is barking outside at 4:17, and he continues to bark for about 20 minutes after, and this is according to the defense documents, about 20 minutes after the white vehicle was seen leaving the scene. And the response from law enforcement was that the rear sliding glass door was still open, and obviously this door was open so that way he can get back into the room, because Murphy was still outside when Bryan Kohberger left at a high rate of speed. So he had to have gotten in and into that room somehow. So that was through an opening door. But I have it all, guys. I have it all. I have all the receipts. Daniel, one more time, any relation to Buddy the dog, especially knowing he had injuries in October? Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, the only thing that I ever found was a document that said, or a news report that said that they believed it was coyotes. I don't know how accurate that is. Hey, Dr. Vaughn, I hope everything is going well. We're praying for you and your family. And do you think BK physically went into the girl's home? Do you think it was BK who was tampering with her locks, etc.? I don't know. I mean, I know that there was a situation where they went back to the house and the back sliding glass door was open and Murphy was out. And they had to go find him. And they don't remember. Obviously, Murphy can't open a sliding glass door on his own. Now, if it was slightly ajar, maybe he can move it with his head and then slide out. But, it sounded like in the report, which I don't know, it said it was open. So it sounds like full open to me, not just slightly ajar. That's a possibility, according to the documents that we read, or no, actually, according to the Idaho 4 book, American Tragedy by James Patterson and Vicki Ward, they spoke with some of the people that knew Bryan Kohberger back in Pennsylvania. And that was part of his MO. He would break into his friends' houses, whether it was Connie Saba's or Mark Bayless, I believe his name was, multiple times too, and leave with open doors. So I think it's quite possible that he was out there. I think there was a report that Kaylee said that she saw a shadowy figure out in the tree line. I think it's possible. Now, were those him? I mean, we can't know for sure, but I think it's possible, for sure. Let's see. And as far as, because I know somebody said, I think it was debunked. Law enforcement says they don't know, which is basically the answer I gave you. I don't know, but there is moments where somebody did enter that house. There was a moment where somebody did enter it, and there's been some suspicious scenarios where somebody was in the tree line. Knowing Bryan Kohberger's history based on the book and these court documents, it sounds like it wouldn't be out of the norm for something that he was accustomed to doing. It sounded like scoping out, places before he attacked them, whether it was just as a burglary or in this scenario, a quadruple homicide. It appears that was his MO. DT, is it possible that Kaylee was in her bed and heard Maddie fight BK and says someone is here, and Kaylee's what is happening, and jumps on BK and he flips her onto the corner? I mean, it's possible, but I just find it weird that both Maddie and Kaylee were under the blanket. Now, if there was stab wounds or tears through the blanket as well, then that's probably an indication that the blanket was over them during the attack. And if that ends up being the case, which it kind of sounded like it, because it said there was tears and there was also blood pulled in it and stuff like that, I'm gonna say that no. I think at some point before Bryan Kohberger went into that house, Kaylee had gotten into bed with Maddie, and they had fallen asleep in bed peacefully before Bryan Kohberger entered that house. I don't think he walked in on her, I don't think she walked in on him committing the crime, based on the blanket being over them in the manner that it was described. It sounds like they were both under the blanket when they were attacked. So it's possible, but I doubt it, given the ferocity of what sounded like the injuries. I don't see how the blanket would get back on top of her. Covering the victim is interesting. I don't know. I mean, if they covered him, that would be some sort of indication of staging the scene. Now, maybe perhaps that's what they meant, or what Steve or some of these folks meant when they said that there was, or Ann Taylor said there was a sign of a cleanup of some kind. Maybe that's what they meant, but I don't know. Do you think BK was in the house multiple times before the event? Would explain BK knowing the house so well. I don't know. Law enforcement doesn't have any evidence of it. So I'm not sure. We have Mary Beth coming in with a membership for 6 months. Didi Fuentes. What's up, Didi? You're amazing. Always here, always supportive. Thank you so much. $4.99 super sticker. Then we have a membership from Elizabeth Brown for 4 months. And then we have Jonathan. Why is this one not? There it goes. Jonathan Madison comes in. Thanks for the stream. Needed federal charges here because BK, the loser, went over state lines, or maybe for mass murder, which could have the death penalty. What's going on, my man? Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support. Yeah, I was surprised, when with some of the information that I found out that they didn't charge him federally. That was one of the questions I've had. And it sounds like it was a question that Steve had, and he was hoping to get an answer for. Bed was still in Kaylee's room. Yeah, Kaylee was still, like, all of her stuff was still there. Majority of her stuff. So Murphy was seen outside. No, Murphy wasn't seen outside. Murphy was heard outside. There's dog barking on the camera 50 feet away. They did some tests and they determined that the dog was outside. They spoke to a neighbor, and the neighbor said that he had heard the dog barking outside at around that time, and he believed it also had been Murphy because that was the only dog that lived in the area. And so could it have been a stray? Possibly, but given the fact that Kaylee's door was open, the back sliding glass door was open, and Murphy didn't have any blood on him, so he wasn't in any of the rooms that where the murders took place, nor after the murders took place, because he didn't step in any blood or anything like that. Leads me to believe that he was most likely outside during the time that the crimes were happening. It's so crazy to finally be putting all the details together. These poor kids. I agree. Yeah, no, Kaylee's room was wide open. Dan, if you think he saw DM and we know he didn't physically harm her, why did he harm Xana? He could have let her be. Ethan was definitely no threat to him. Why harm Ethan? It's a good question. I think that when it comes to Xana, she had seen him. There was a confrontation. I think his attempt was trying to silence her. I don't think he was done. I think that he overexerted himself because with Xana, he had attacked. I think she had over 50 stab wounds. And so, he was a predator. He was a killer. He was a psycho. And so when he saw her and she was awake and he saw the opportunity there, I think he grasped that opportunity and he went for it. As far as why Ethan, I think mainly because he was in the room with him. I couldn't tell you like every aspect of it. Obviously, I mean, this guy's a crazy person and he has his reasons. Why would he do that to them? Or why would he do it to any of them? Because he's a crazy person. He's a psycho. He's the things that he was searching for. He searched about psychopaths and sociopaths. He talked about his emotions. He was hyper aware of his emotions at a very young age. I mean, not his emotions, that his inability for emotions. The thoughts of maybe perhaps that he struggled with sociopath, or that he was struggled as a sociopath or a psychopath, or those type of things. But who knows? I mean, he's the only one that does. Poor Murphy tried to get help. That's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like. It also sounds like Dylan locked the door when she saw him. It's what I read in one of the documents. Let's see. If I'm missing, I'm getting close to the end. He did stage it. He also staged Xana and Ethan. I don't think he staged him. It sounds like Xana fell back and was in the same position that she was when she got attacked. And I don't believe he would have staged them or moved them much, if any. Based on the evidence that we have and the attention to details to not leave DNA behind. If he would have started to move the bodies or cover the bodies or start handling things more than he needed to, that would have been more of a chance for him to leave DNA behind. Given the fact that he didn't close any of the doors or any of those things, he touched everything once. Made made an effort to not touch things multiple times. It tells me I doubt it. I doubt it, but it's possible. You know, I doubt it. Visuals, no, I'm not sure. What is Josh Jones's point? I want to see that. Visuals, no, saved her. Maybe I think he wasn't aware of what she yelled, and I think he thought maybe she notified law enforcement. I think that's why he turned on his phone at 4:48 in the morning to hear what's going on with dispatch. What do I think about BK lurking in people's yards? I don't know if that one was actually him. You know, some of those tips were definitely not accurate. They're not true, inaccurate. You know, there was some tips that were just kind of way out there too. Daniel, do you think when Eva would hurt somebody trying to open the door a month before with him? Sorry, I'm not. Do you think when Eva would hurt somebody trying to open the door a month before with him? I think when she heard somebody open the door, probably not. You know, I don't think that was him because they were trying to utilize that as evidence for Bryan Kohberger. They brought her in as a witness. So what she said was that she heard on the specific night that somebody tried to open or jiggle her door, and nobody was there or whatnot. And so Bryan Kohberger's defense team tried to utilize her as a witness. And the reason they would try to utilize her as a witness is if they had some sort of proof or evidence that Bryan Kohberger wasn't in the area that night. And they could say, oh, look, there was somebody else who was lurking trying to open doors. So I doubt it. I've heard that she heard, "You're fine, I'm here to help." Something of that nature. Yeah, I read that on there, that it's fine or it's okay, I'm here to help, or something of that nature. I saw that. I read that too. Let's see. Did you hear a reporter from Idaho Statement interview Bill Thompson, and Bill Thompson revealed that the two IDs found in the glove were two women in PA, one he went to school with? I did not hear that. I need to look that up. That's interesting. I'm not surprised. You know, when I heard about those IDs, I asked about those IDs from, I guess it don't matter now. I asked Steve about those IDs, and Steve told me, he said that he asked about them, and what he was told was they're not our victims. So what he meant by that, I'm not sure. You know, obviously not the victims at the house, but our victims kind of made it seem like they were victims of some other kind, maybe a burglary of some kind. But I wouldn't be surprised. I've not heard that, Jersey John. Thank you for that information. If you can send me that, I you know what? I have the Statesman. Maybe I'll be able to pull that up later. Wasn't the back of Ethan's legs carved, but he was found with his backs XM. His legs were over the bed. I don't remember his legs being over the bed. I remember that it said that his head seemed like it was, and that there was a blanket covering his midsection, and then the legs that were stabbed twice, you couldn't tell based on the way he was positioned at first. Even the stab to his neck wasn't very visible, and that you kind of had to move the body, and then you can see where he was stabbed. But you could see, they said that you could see the spray, the arterial spray from where he got stabbed in one of the arteries. So on the wall, and very sad, but you couldn't really tell. That from what I remember on the reading from the documents, it said you couldn't see it from there. Let's see. I've been waiting since the beginning to hear whose IDs were in the glove. Yeah. And it, you know, if it is somebody from his past, right? Let's just say it's somebody he went to, like Jersey Jones said, went to school with. What if this was like Northampton, Pennsylvania school? Is it the sales, or is it high school? If it's high school and he still carries her ID with him, you know, all these years later, tells you how obsessive he is, how crazy he is. All righty, guys. Well, that's going to do it for me tonight. You guys have a great night. I want to thank everybody that's tuned in. I'll be back on tomorrow night. A good possibility that I'm going to be talking about the couple who lost their lives out there in Arkansas. There's been some developments in that case. I want to kind of break down everything that I've seen so far. In that case, I've kind of been following it, kind of give my opinion on some of the evidence, my thoughts on, you know, if it was a targeted attack, crime of opportunity, possible motive, things of that nature. So I'll be on tomorrow night, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell button. You guys know what to do. I'll see you guys later. Peace out.